The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in a meeting. My phone buzzed twice, then a third time. I glanced down and saw Mom's name flashing across the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. If I had, maybe the next few months would have unfolded differently. But I didn't. I stepped out into the hallway, the hum of the air conditioning filling the silence, and answered. "Hi, Mom." Her voice came through warm, casual, like she was calling to ask about dinner plans. "Oh good, you picked up. I was worried you'd be busy." "I've got a few minutes," I said, leaning against the cool wall. "What's up?" There was a pause. Not long, just enough to make my chest tighten. Then she said it, smooth as silk, like she was telling me she'd rearranged the living room furniture. "We gave your trust fund to Ryan. He needs it more than you do." For a second, I didn't process the words. They hung in the air between us, strange and foreign, like a language I'd never learned. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because what else do you do when your brain short-circuits? "What?" I said, still smiling, waiting for the punchline. "Your trust fund," she repeated, slower this time. "Your father and I transferred it to your brother. He's been struggling, and you're doing so well." It just made sense. The hallway tilted. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. My voice came out quieter than I intended. "You transferred my trust fund to Ryan." "Yes, sweetheart. Don't make this dramatic. It's still family money. We're just helping him get on his feet." I could hear her moving around in the background, the clink of dishes, the sound of the faucet running. She was doing the dishes while dismantling my future like it was nothing. "Mom," I said slowly, each word deliberate. "That money was mine. Grandma left it to me. And now it's helping your brother," she said, her tone sharpening just slightly. "You have a good job, a nice apartment. Ryan's been through a rough time. This is what families do. We help each other." Help. That word again. The same word they'd used my entire life to justify every unequal exchange, every time I was expected to shrink so Ryan could expand. "How much?" I asked. "What? How much did you give him?" She hesitated. "All of it." The air left my lungs. "All of it." "It was the right thing to do," she said, defensive now. "You'll understand when you calm down." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there in that empty hallway, staring at the beige walls, feeling something inside me go very, very still. "When did you do this?" I asked. "A few months ago. We didn't want to upset you, but your father thought you should know eventually." "Months." They'd taken $250,000 that my grandmother had saved, invested, and designated specifically for me, and they'd handed it to my brother like a birthday gift. And they'd waited months to tell me. "I have to go," I said. "Charlotte, don't be like this." I hung up. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. Around me, people walked past in suits and heels, carrying coffee and folders, living their normal Tuesday afternoons. None of them knew that my world had just collapsed in the span of a 3-minute phone call. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and stared at my computer screen. The spreadsheet I'd been working on blurred into meaningless numbers. Then, slowly, I opened a new browser tab and typed, "Trust fund lawyer near me." They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd swallow it like I'd swallowed everything else. But as I scrolled through the results, something cold and precise settled in my chest. This time, I wasn't going to disappear. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, the glow of the screen the only light in the apartment. Outside, the city hummed with its usual Tuesday night rhythm, car horns and distant sirens, but inside, everything had gone quiet. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I'd already searched trust fund lawyer 3 times, clicked through a dozen websites, read reviews until the words blurred together. But I hadn't called anyone yet. Part of me still hoped this was a misunderstanding, some terrible miscommunication that would unravel with a single conversation. Then I opened my banking app. The trust account sat at the top of my dashboard, the one Grandma had set up when I was 16. She'd called me into her living room that day, the smell of lavender and old books heavy in the air, and handed me a folder. "This is yours," she'd said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Not your parents'. Not your brother's. Yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I'd nodded, young and naive, thinking she was just being cautious. Now, staring at the screen, I understood. She'd seen something I hadn't. She'd known. Balance, $0. I refreshed the page. Same result. Refreshed again. Nothing changed. $250,000. Gone. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars. The anger hadn't hit yet. That would come later. Right now, all I felt was a strange, hollow clarity, the kind that comes when you realize the people who were supposed to protect you have been dismantling you piece by piece your entire life. By dawn, I'd made a list. Not an emotional one, a tactical one. Every instance I could remember where Ryan got more. The car they bought him at 17 while I saved for mine. The college tuition they paid in full while I worked 2 jobs to cover my loans. The down payment on his first house. Just a loan, they'd said. A loan that was never repaid. And now this. The final piece. The one thing that was supposed to be untouchable. At 8 a.m., I called the first lawyer on my list. His name was Martin Cross, and his website promised aggressive representation in estate and trust disputes. When his assistant answered, I kept my voice steady. "I need to speak with Mr. Cross about a trust fund that was transferred without my consent. Can you hold, please?" I held. Muzak played, some instrumental version of a song I didn't recognize. When the line clicked back on, a man's voice came through, deep and measured. "This is Martin Cross. Tell me what happened." I told him. All of it. The phone call, the transfer, my grandmother's explicit instructions, my parents' justification. He didn't interrupt. Just listened, the occasional scratch of a pen in the background. When I finished, there was a pause. Then he said, "Do you have documentation?" "The original trust agreement, account statements, anything showing the terms?" "I have everything," I said. "Grandma gave me copies of all the paperwork. I have emails, texts, even a recorded voicemail where my dad mentions the account." "Good." His tone shifted, sharper now. "Here's what you need to understand. If that trust was irrevocable and designated specifically to you, what your parents did wasn't just unethical. It was illegal. This isn't a family dispute. This is fraud." The word landed like a stone. Fraud. "Can we get it back?" I asked. "We can try," he said. "But I need to see everything. Can you come in today?" "Yes. 2 o'clock. Bring every document you have." When I hung up, the apartment felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or just less suffocating. I made coffee, showered, dressed in my most professional suit. Then I pulled out the folder Grandma had given me all those years ago and spread the contents across the table. Every page was a piece of proof. Every signature, every clause, every line that said "This is yours." They'd taken it. But I was going to make them give it back. Growing up, I learned early that Ryan and I existed in different universes. Same house, same parents, but the rules that applied to him never touched me, and the ones that buried me never reached him. When I was 8, I wanted a bicycle. Not just any bike, a purple one with streamers and a basket, the kind I'd seen other girls riding down our street, hair flying behind them like freedom. I saved my allowance for 6 months, counting quarters in a mason jar under my bed. When I finally had enough, Mom drove me to the store. I picked it out myself, paid with crumpled bills and a fistful of change. The cashier smiled at me like I'd done something impressive. 2 years later, Ryan wanted a bike. He was 10. He didn't save. He didn't wait. He just mentioned it once at dinner, and the next weekend, Dad brought home a brand new mountain bike, red and silver, with shocks and gears I didn't even understand. Ryan rode it twice, then left it in the garage to rust. When I asked why he got his for free, Mom said, "You're so independent, Charlotte. You don't need us the way he does." Independent. Their word for ignored. It became a pattern, one I didn't have language for until much later. I learned to do things myself because asking meant disappointment. Ryan learned to ask because asking meant delivery. By high school, the gap had widened into a chasm. I worked weekends at the library to save for college. Ryan got a car for his 17th birthday, a used sedan that Dad spent 3 weekends fixing up. When Ryan wrecked it 6 months later, they bought him another one. When I asked to borrow the car to drive to a job interview, Mom said, "Ryan needs it more. You can take the bus." I took the bus. College was the same story, only louder. I got into a state school with a partial scholarship and covered the rest with loans and 2 part-time jobs. I waited tables on weekends, shelved books during the week, and studied in the gaps between shifts. My parents came to visit once. They stayed for an hour. Ryan got into a private liberal arts school with no scholarship. Tuition was $40,000 a year. They paid it in full. When I asked how they could afford it, Dad said, "We've been saving." Saving? I'd never seen evidence of it in my life. After college, I moved to the city, found a job in finance, and clawed my way up through sheer stubbornness. I lived in a shoebox apartment, ate ramen more nights than I'd admit, and sent my parents a card every birthday. They visited once in 5 years. Ryan moved back home. He bounced between jobs, tried his hand at freelance graphic design, started a podcast that lasted 3 episodes. When his car broke down, they bought him a new one. When his credit card debt hit $15,000, they paid it off. "Just this once," they said. It was never just once. I stopped calling as much. Not out of anger, just exhaustion. Every conversation was a performance. They'd ask how I was doing, and before I could finish a sentence, Ryan's name would surface. "Your brother's going through a tough time. Ryan's thinking about going back to school. We're helping him get on his feet." I became a ghost in my own family. Present, but not visible. Successful, but not celebrated. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd built a life without them. I didn't need their approval. But Grandma's trust fund, that was different. That was mine. She'd looked me in the eye and said it. She'd put it in writing. It was the one thing they couldn't take. Until they did. And when that phone call came, when my mother said, "We gave it to Ryan," I finally understood something I'd been avoiding my whole life. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as a resource. And Ryan wasn't my brother. He was their project, the one they poured everything into because they believed he needed saving. I didn't need saving. I needed justice. The meeting with Martin Cross happened on a Thursday. His office sat on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown, the kind of place where every surface reflected your own uncertainty back at you. I arrived 10 minutes early, clutching a leather folder stuffed with documents I'd organized the night before. The receptionist smiled at me, professional and distant. "Mr. Cross will be right with you." I sat in the waiting area, hands folded over the folder, watching the second hand on the wall clock tick forward. My leg bounced despite my best efforts to stay still. Around me, everything was polished, mahogany furniture, framed degrees, the faint smell of expensive coffee. When the door opened, Martin Cross stepped out. He was older than I'd expected, maybe mid-50s, with gray at his temples and the kind of calm that comes from seeing every lie a family can tell. "Charlotte," he said, extending his hand. Come in. His office was smaller than the waiting room but warmer. Books lined the walls, legal texts mixed with novels. He gestured to a chair across from his desk and sat down, folding his hands. Show me what you have. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the desk. The original trust agreement, dated 18 years ago, signed by my grandmother, a notary, and 2 witnesses. My name was on every page. Martin read it slowly, his eyes moving line by line. When he reached the 3rd page, he paused, tapping one finger against a specific clause. Irrevocable, he said quietly. Do you know what that means? That it can't be changed, I said. Not just that. He looked up at me. It means your grandmother legally surrendered control of those funds the moment she signed this. The only person with authority over that money is you. Not your parents. Not your brother. You. Something in my chest loosened. So they couldn't just transfer it. Not legally, no. He flipped to the next page. Do you have account statements? I slid them across. 6 months of statements, each one showing a balance hovering around $250,000, steady and untouched. Then the final statement, dated 3 months ago. Balance, $0. Transfer out, $250,000. Recipient, Ryan A. Hartman. Martin stared at the page for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and pressed a button. Sarah, I need you to pull everything we have on irrevocable trust violations. And get me a forensic accountant who can start tomorrow. When he hung up, he leaned back in his chair. Charlotte, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Did you sign anything? Any paperwork, any forms, anything at all that your parents asked you to sign in the last year? I thought back. Birthdays, holidays, casual family dinners that felt more like obligations. Then I remembered. Thanksgiving, 6 months ago. My father had pulled out a stack of papers while we were cleaning up after dinner. Just some estate planning updates, he'd said. Your mom and I are getting older. We want to make sure everything's in order. Sign here and here. I'd signed. I hadn't read them. He was my father. Why would I? Yes, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Last Thanksgiving. My dad said it was estate planning. Martin's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Do you have copies? No. He said he'd send them to me. He never did. Of course he didn't. Martin made a note on his legal pad. Here's what likely happened. Those documents weren't estate planning. They were authorization forms, possibly power of attorney or trust amendment requests. Your signature gave them access they shouldn't have had. The room tilted. I gave them permission. You gave them a signature, Martin corrected. There's a difference. If they misrepresented what you were signing, that's fraud. If they forged additional documents, that's fraud. Either way, we have a case. He pulled out a fresh legal pad and started writing. I'm going to need everything. Emails, text messages, voicemails. Anything where they mention the trust, the transfer, or your brother's financial situation. Can you get me those? I already have them, I said, sliding my phone across the desk. I recorded the call when my mother told me. And I have texts from my dad justifying it. Martin looked at the phone, then at me. For the first time, he smiled. Not warm, but satisfied. Then we have everything we need. Martin worked fast. Within 48 hours, he'd filed a motion to freeze Ryan's accounts and requested a full audit of the trust transfer. The forensic accountant, a woman named Dr. Patricia Lim, arrived at his office the following Monday with a laptop and the kind of focus that made the air feel thinner. I sat across from both of them as Patricia opened her findings. Her screen filled with spreadsheets, transaction logs, dates, and amounts color-coded in ways I didn't understand but that clearly meant something to her. Here's what we know, she said, her voice clinical and precise. The transfer occurred on November 8th. $250,000 moved from the trust account into a personal checking account under Ryan Hartman's name. The authorization came through electronically, signed by both parents as co-trustees. But they weren't co-trustees, I said. Correct. Patricia zoomed in on a document. According to the original trust agreement, your grandmother was the sole trustee until her death, at which point you became the beneficiary with full control. Your parents were never listed as trustees. They had no legal authority. Martin leaned forward. So how did they access the account? Patricia clicked to another screen. That's where it gets interesting. 3 weeks before the transfer, someone submitted a trustee amendment form to the bank. It lists your parents as successor trustees and includes your signature at the bottom. My stomach dropped. The Thanksgiving papers. Most likely, Patricia said. She pulled up a side-by-side comparison. On the left, my real signature from my driver's license and credit card applications. On the right, the signature on the trustee amendment. They were similar. But not identical. Look at the capital C, Patricia said, pointing. In your real signature, the loop is wide and open. In this one, it's tight, almost closed. And the tail on the E in Charlotte, yours always extends below the baseline. This one doesn't. Martin's jaw tightened. They forged it. Partially, Patricia clarified. My guess is they had you sign something legitimate at Thanksgiving, probably a blank sheet or a form with minimal text. Then they scanned that signature and digitally placed it onto the trustee amendment. I felt cold. That's legal? It's not, Martin said flatly. It's forgery. And when combined with the misrepresentation of the original document you signed, it's textbook fraud. Patricia continued. There's more. After the transfer, Ryan made 3 large purchases within 2 weeks. A truck for $45,000, a down payment on a condo for $60,000, and a lump sum payment to a business partner for $30,000. The remaining funds are still in his account, but they've been moved twice, likely to avoid detection. Can we trace it all? Martin asked. Every cent, Patricia said. And I can testify to the forgery. The digital artifacts are clear. Whoever did this wasn't sophisticated. They left metadata, timestamps, even the original file path embedded in the document. Martin turned to me. Charlotte, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be absolutely certain before you answer. Are you prepared to take this to court? Not just your parents, but your brother too. This will destroy your family. I thought about Grandma's living room, the smell of lavender, her frail hand holding mine. This is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I thought about the bike I'd saved for, the loans I'd carried, the phone calls that always ended with Ryan's name. I thought about my mother's voice on that Tuesday afternoon. You're doing so well. He needs it more. I met Martin's eyes. They destroyed it a long time ago. I'm just making it official. He nodded once. Then we file tomorrow. Patricia closed her laptop. I'll have the full forensic report ready by end of day. Every transaction, every timestamp, every piece of evidence that proves they stole from you. As I left the office that afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. Let's talk about this like adults. No need to involve lawyers. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it and kept walking. They'd had months to talk like adults. Now it was time to talk like criminals. The lawsuit was filed on a Wednesday morning. By noon, my phone started ringing. First my mother, then my father, then Ryan. I let every call go to voicemail. I sat at my desk at work, staring at my computer screen, pretending the spreadsheet in front of me mattered while my phone buzzed like an angry wasp trapped in a jar. That evening, I finally listened to the messages. My mother's voice came first, shaky and high. Charlotte, what have you done? Your father and I are being accused of fraud. Fraud. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. Call me back right now. Then my father, his tone harder, clipped. This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing the entire family over money. Money we used to help your brother, your own flesh and blood. You need to drop this immediately. Ryan's message was different. Quieter. Almost confused. Char, I don't understand. Mom and Dad said you were okay with this. Why are you doing this? We're family. I played that one twice. We're family. As if that phrase was supposed to erase everything, as if saying it out loud made theft okay, made erasure justified, made my entire life of being overlooked suddenly noble. I didn't call any of them back. Instead, I sat on my apartment floor, back against the couch, knees pulled to my chest, and let myself feel it. All of it. The anger, yes. That was easy. But beneath it was something heavier, quieter. Grief. I was grieving the family I'd wanted to have. The one where my father noticed when I won awards. Where my mother asked about my life without pivoting to Ryan within 30 seconds. Where my brother saw me as more than the responsible one who'd always be fine. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn a place at a table where the chairs were already assigned. And no matter what I did, save money, build a career, stay silent, stay small, there was never room for me. Not really. They hadn't just stolen my trust fund. They'd stolen something deeper, the belief that I mattered to them at all. When I was younger, maybe 10 or 11, I made a Mother's Day card. I spent hours on it, cutting construction paper into the shape of a flower, writing a poem inside in my neatest handwriting. I gave it to my mom at breakfast, my heart pounding with the kind of hope only kids have. She smiled, said, "That's lovely, sweetheart," and set it on the counter. Then she turned to Ryan, who hadn't made anything, and said, "You don't have to make a card, honey. I know you love me." I found my card in the recycling bin 2 days later. I didn't cry then. I just stopped making cards. That night, sitting on my apartment floor 20 years later, I finally let myself cry. Not because of the money. Not even because of the lawsuit. But because I'd spent my whole life believing that if I was just good enough, quiet enough, successful enough, they'd finally see me. And they never did. The worst part wasn't the theft. It was realizing they thought I'd accept it. That they'd called me, told me what they'd done, and expected me to smile and say, "Of course, anything for Ryan." They didn't know me at all. Or maybe they did. Maybe they knew exactly who I was, the dependable one, the one who never made waves, and they'd counted on that. They'd gambled that I'd stay silent one more time. They'd lost. I wiped my face, stood up, and walked to the window. The city stretched out below me, lights scattered like stars. Somewhere out there, my parents were panicking, calling lawyers, trying to spin this into something I'd done wrong. Ryan was probably confused, playing the victim like he always did. And me? For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to keep the peace. I was finally fighting for myself. My phone buzzed again. Another call from my mother. I watched it ring, then fade to black. Then I whispered to the empty room, "I'm not your backup plan anymore." The first court date arrived faster than I expected. Martin had warned me it would be preliminary, just motions and procedures, nothing dramatic. But when I walked into the courthouse that morning, my chest felt tight, my hands cold despite the warm June air. I wore a navy suit, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Martin had coached me, calm, composed, credible. "Let the evidence do the talking," he'd said. "You just need to show up and be yourself." Myself. I wasn't sure who that was anymore. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled like floor cleaner and old coffee. I sat on a wooden bench, hands folded over my briefcase, waiting. Martin stood nearby talking to Patricia, both of them reviewing documents with the kind of focus that made me feel like a spectator in my own case. Then I saw them. My parents appeared at the far end of the hallway, flanked by their attorney, a tall man in an expensive suit whose name I'd seen on the court documents, Gerald Pritchard. Behind them, Ryan walked slowly, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes on the floor. My mother spotted me first. Her face twisted, something between hurt and rage, and she started toward me. My father caught her arm. "Linda, don't," he said quietly. But she pulled free and kept coming, heels clicking against the tile. I stood up, instinct more than courage, and Martin stepped between us. "Mrs. Hartman," he said firmly. "You need to stay back." She stopped, close enough that I could see the redness around her eyes, the way her hands trembled. "How could you?" she said, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to your own family?" I didn't answer. My throat had closed. "We raised you," she continued, louder now. People in the hallway turned to look. "We fed you, clothed you, paid for your education. And this is how you repay us? By dragging us into court like criminals?" "You are criminals," Martin said evenly. "You stole $250,000 from your daughter." My father stepped forward then, his voice measured, controlled. "We didn't steal anything. That money was always meant to help the family. Charlotte's successful. She doesn't need it. Ryan was drowning. We made a choice to help him. That's what parents do." "Not with money that wasn't yours," Martin replied. Gerald Pritchard finally spoke, his tone smooth and practiced. "Your Honor will see that this is a family matter, not a criminal one. My clients acted in good faith to support their struggling son. Miss Hartman's accusations are rooted in sibling rivalry, not legal merit." I felt the words land like stones. Sibling rivalry. As if this was about jealousy, as if I was a petty child throwing a tantrum. Ryan finally looked up, his face pale. "Char, please. I didn't know they took it without asking you. I thought you agreed. Can't we just figure this out? I'll pay you back, I swear." Something in his voice almost broke me. He sounded genuine, scared. For a moment, I saw him the way I used to. My little brother, the one I used to protect from bullies at school, the one who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. But then I remembered the truck. The condo. The business investment. He hadn't asked questions when $250,000 appeared in his account. He'd just spent it. "Pay me back with what?" I said quietly. "You've already spent most of it." His face flushed. "I'll get a loan. I'll work it out. Just drop this. Please." My mother's voice rose again. "You're tearing this family apart over money. Money, Charlotte. After everything we've sacrificed for you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something I should have understood years ago. In her mind, she genuinely believed this. She believed they'd sacrificed. She believed I owed them. She believed Ryan deserved it more. The tragedy wasn't that she was lying. It was that she actually thought she was right. "You sacrificed nothing," I said, my voice steady. "You just chose him. Every single time." The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. "Hartman versus Hartman. We're ready for you." Martin touched my elbow gently. "Let's go." The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wooden benches, fluorescent lights, a flag hanging limp in the corner. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, sat behind the bench reviewing a stack of papers. We took our seats. Martin and I on one side, my parents and their attorney on the other. Ryan sat behind them in the gallery, slumped forward with his elbows on his knees. The judge looked up. "This is a preliminary hearing for Hartman versus Hartman, case number 24 CV 8831. We're here to address the plaintiff's motion for an emergency freeze of assets and the defendant's motion to dismiss." Mr. Cross, you may proceed. Martin stood, his voice calm and clear. Your Honor, this case is straightforward. The plaintiff, Charlotte Hartman, is the sole beneficiary of an irrevocable trust established by her late grandmother. 3 months ago, the defendants unlawfully transferred $250,000 from that trust to their son without the plaintiff's knowledge or consent. We have documentation proving forgery, misrepresentation, and fraud. He placed a folder on the judge's bench. We're asking the court to freeze all assets derived from that transfer and to order full restitution. Gerald Pritchard rose, his tone smooth. Your Honor, this is a family dispute being mischaracterized as a crime. My clients acted as parents helping their son during a financial crisis. Miss Hartman was aware of her brother's struggles. Any procedural irregularities were unintentional, not criminal. The judge looked at him over her glasses. Unintentional forgery? A misunderstanding of the trust's terms, Your Honor. My clients believed they had authority as her parents. Do you have evidence of that belief? Pritchard hesitated. We have testimony from the family that this was always understood to be shared family resources. Testimony, the judge repeated. Mr. Cross, do you have documentation? We do, Your Honor. Martin opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. The original trust agreement, signed and notarized. Bank records showing the unauthorized transfer. And a forensic analysis proving the signature on the trustee amendment was digitally manipulated. He paused, then pulled out his phone. We also have a recorded phone call where Mrs. Hartman admits to the transfer. The judge's eyebrows lifted. Play it. Martin connected his phone to the courtroom's audio system. The room filled with static, then my mother's voice, clear and unmistakable. We gave your trust fund to Ryan. He needs it more than you do. My own voice followed, younger, confused. You transferred my trust fund. To Ryan. Yes, sweetheart. Don't make this dramatic. It's still family money. We're just helping him get on his feet. The recording ended. Silence pressed against the walls like a held breath. The judge looked at my parents. Mrs. Hartman, is that your voice? My mother's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she whispered, yes. And did you, in fact, transfer funds from your daughter's trust account to your son without her permission? My father leaned forward. Your Honor, with all due respect, we're her parents. We were trying to help our family. That's not what I asked. The judge's tone sharpened. Did you transfer the funds without her permission? A long pause. Then, quietly, yes. The judge set down her pen. Mr. Pritchard, your clients just admitted on the record to unauthorized transfer of funds. That's not a family dispute. That's theft. Pritchard's face reddened. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to confer with my clients. Denied. The judge turned to Martin. Your motion for an asset freeze is granted. All funds derived from the transfer are frozen effective immediately. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for a full hearing on restitution and potential criminal charges. She banged her gavel once. Court is adjourned. The room erupted. My mother gasped. Ryan stood up, face stricken. My father just sat there, staring at the table. Martin leaned toward me. That's the callback. The exact words that started this just convicted them. I nodded, unable to speak. They'd buried themselves with a single phone call. The final hearing happened on a Tuesday, exactly 3 months after the phone call that started everything. The courtroom was fuller this time. Not with spectators, just the weight of what was about to be decided. The judge entered, and we all stood. When she sat, the room settled into a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. We're here for final arguments in Hartman versus Hartman, she said, glancing at her notes. Mr. Cross? Martin rose. Your Honor, the facts are undisputed. The defendants unlawfully transferred $250,000 from an irrevocable trust, forged documents to gain access, and spent the majority of those funds within weeks. We're asking for full restitution, legal fees, and a referral to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. The judge nodded, then turned to Gerald Pritchard. Mr. Pritchard? He stood, and for the first time, he looked tired. Your Honor, my clients acknowledge their actions were legally improper. They've agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of $250,000 plus interest, legal fees, and a formal apology. In exchange, we ask that criminal charges be dropped. I felt Martin tense beside me. We'd discussed this. He'd told me I didn't have to accept anything less than accountability. The judge looked at me. Miss Hartman, this is your case. Do you accept the settlement? Every eye in the room turned toward me. My mother, her hands folded in her lap, eyes red. My father, jaw tight, staring straight ahead. Ryan, slouched in the gallery, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I thought about all the years I'd stayed quiet. All the times I'd swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. Every moment I'd made myself smaller so they could feel bigger. No, Your Honor, I said. My voice didn't shake. I don't accept. My mother's breath caught. Pritchard's eyes widened. The judge leaned forward slightly. Can you tell me why? I stood. Martin hadn't told me to, but it felt right. Because this isn't about money anymore. It's about what they believed they could take from me and get away with. I turned to face my parents. My whole life, I was the easy one. The one who didn't need anything. The one who'd always be fine. And you used that. You used my silence, my independence, my success, as permission to erase me. My mother started to speak, but the judge raised a hand. Let her finish. I continued, my voice steady. When you took that money, you didn't just steal from a trust fund. You stole the one thing my grandmother gave me that said I mattered. That I was seen. That I was worth protecting. My father's head dropped. Ryan covered his face with his hands. So no, I said. I don't accept a settlement where you pay money and walk away. I want accountability. I want it on record that what you did was wrong. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family disagreement. Wrong. The judge watched me for a long moment. Then she turned to my parents. Mrs. Hartman, Mr. Hartman, do you have anything to say? My mother stood slowly, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I was helping my son. I didn't think, she stopped, tears spilling over. I didn't think about what it would do to you. That's the problem, I said quietly. You never did. The judge picked up her gavel. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Full restitution of $250,000 plus $37,000 in interest and legal fees. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. She looked at my parents. You're fortunate your daughter is willing to show you more mercy than you showed her. If she weren't, you'd be facing prison time. The gavel came down. Final. As people began to stand and gather their things, I felt something shift inside me. Not triumph. Not even relief. Just clarity. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to disappear for people who never saw you in the first place. I walked out of that courtroom alone. And for the first time in my life, alone didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom. 6 months after the judgment, my life looked completely different. Not because everything changed overnight, but because I finally stopped waiting for permission to exist. The money was returned in full, deposited back into the trust account with interest. I didn't touch it right away. For weeks, I just looked at the balance on my phone, proof that I'd fought for myself and won. Eventually, I used part of it the way Grandma intended. I paid off my student loans, invested in my future, and donated a portion to a legal aid fund for people fighting family exploitation. The rest? I locked it away. Not out of fear, but out of respect for what it represented. My parents and I don't speak anymore. The last message I received from my mother came 2 months after the trial, a long email full of apologies and explanations. She said they'd been under stress, that they hadn't meant to hurt me, that family should forgive. I read it once. Then I archived it. Forgiveness isn't something you owe someone just because they're related to you. And healing doesn't require reconciliation. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away and let the door close behind you. Ryan tried reaching out, too. A text here and there, awkward and tentative. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Can we talk? I didn't block him. But I didn't respond either. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I won't. Either way, it'll be my choice, not an obligation. The hardest part wasn't the trial or the money or even the fallout. It was unlearning the belief that my worth was tied to their approval. For years, I'd measured my value by how little I asked for, how much I could give, how invisible I could be. Now, I measure it by something simpler, my own peace. I still think about that phone call sometimes. The one that started everything. We gave your trust fund to Ryan. He needs it more than you do. And I realize now that in that single sentence, they told me everything I needed to know. Not that Ryan needed help. But that they believed I didn't matter enough to ask. That clarity, painful as it was, set me free. These days, I wake up in my apartment, make coffee, and sit by the window watching the city come alive. I have friends who see me, a career I built on my own terms, and a life that belongs entirely to me. No guilt. No ghosts. No voices telling me I'm selfish for taking up space. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I wish I'd just let it go, taken the settlement, kept the family intact. The answer is always the same, no. Because what I lost wasn't a family. It was the illusion of one. And what I gained was something far more valuable, myself. I learned that you can love people and still hold them accountable. That protecting your peace isn't cruelty, it's survival. And that sometimes, the people who taught you to stay silent are the ones who need to hear you the loudest. If you're reading this, if you've ever been the forgotten one, the dependable one, the one everyone takes from because they know you won't fight back, I need you to hear this. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for refusing to be used. You are not a bad person for choosing yourself. The people who love you won't punish you for having limits. And the ones who do? They never loved you. They loved what you gave them. My grandmother used to say, "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She meant the money. But I think she meant something bigger. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't matter. That your pain isn't valid. That staying quiet is the same as being kind. It's not. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is tell the truth. Even when it shatters everything. So, here's my question for you. Have you ever been erased by your own family? Have you been the one expected to give endlessly while others take freely? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And I promise, you're not alone. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the next story might be the one that finally makes them realize they're allowed to fight back. You don't owe anyone your silence. Not even family. Especially not family.